Welcome back to Fourth and Pain, the only pro wrestling show hosted by an NFL player and a former wrestling announcer turned weight loss champion. Taking it home now, as they say in the business, and we're bringing in the best in the business. Grant Paulsen, beat reporter for 1067 The Fan, here to talk a little pigskin with us. Grant, how are you, sir?
What's up, fellas? How are you guys doing?
I'm doing damn good. How are you, Adam?
I'm doing glorious. And yourself?
Well, he's good. I'm good. You're
Everyone's
good.
everyone's
good.
marvelous.
This
Great.
is going to be a positive segment. And there's a lot of optimism, Grant, about this team coming off of the bye week. I think that the Giants' loss in Cincinnati plays a big part of this. But suddenly, a team that heading into the bye week, which had been written off, is now somewhat back in the playoff picture. A win today against the Philadelphia Eagles, and you can make an argument that these guys are right back in it. What is your sense of where this team is?
Well, I would agree with you. I mean, first of all, the Redskins have to take care of their own business, obviously. And if they're able to beat Philadelphia, in essence, it's a win worth kind of 2 points on the big board, if you will. I look at wins as worth a point and your divisional foes losing as a point. So you'd be getting a win while pushing a team south in the standings in Philadelphia that right now is equally as desperate as Washington, by the way, to get a victory. I mean, this is a team that's just ravenous for any kind of positive coverage. The Eagles have lost 5 straight games under Andy Reid. For the first time in his career on the sidelines, they've actually not won a game since the last time the Philadelphia Phillies, who didn't even make the baseball playoffs, of course, the World Series has come and gone.
Wow.
Won a game, which is pretty stunning. So they're just in a bad way. They've got a rookie quarterback making his debut as a starter. And so the Redskins, I think, have a chance to perform at a high level today. But you're right. You get a win, you're 4-6. They're only 2 games off the pace in what is all of a sudden a pretty mediocre NFC East, and that's all that matters. They'll have 1 game left against the Giants, 2 games left against Dallas, who will be 1 game better than them potentially. A worst-case scenario, I guess, they could be a couple of games off the pace there too. But the Redskins have all their goals still in front of them with just a little bit of help. Now they've got to take care of their own business, though.
And the bye week comes at an opportune time. The guys return to Redskins Park, relaxed, refreshed. And so you're looking at facing a rookie quarterback who's going to get his first start today for the Philadelphia Eagles in Nick Foles. But the Redskins haven't exactly, nor has anybody else, had the opportunity to see too much of this guy other than the preseason and what he was able to do last week. What is that unknown factor, and does it concern the Redskins secondary, which has been struggling as of late?
Well, that's the biggest problem, number one. It's just the fact that the Redskins secondary has been pretty porous in coverage. Teams have had a lot of room to operate. Receivers have run free far too often. They gave up another huge play in the passing game on busted coverage against Carolina. They went down the sideline for 88 yards on a switch route where basically Josh Wilson at corner ran inside with the number 1 receiver. Number 2 came out along the sideline uncovered and just dashed down the sideline wide open for 80-plus yards. But the biggest problem, maybe even more so than coverage, is just getting pressure. And I think that's what you've got to do against a neophyte at quarterback and Nick Foles is try to confuse him, try to generate a pass rush, try to collapse the pocket, make him move his feet. Don't allow him to be comfortable. If he's got time, then all of a sudden he's going to feel like he's right back in Arizona a season or 2 ago, slinging the ball around at 6'6" and 243 and reading defenses. He's a very smart guy. But if you're making him move, if he's making decisions quicker than he wants to, if he's trying to find things out pre-snap, and then you make an adjustment with your alignment so that all of a sudden whatever he accounted for is not the case anymore, then there's ways to get to Foles that you may not have been able to even with Michael Vick just based on his experience and some of the savvy you get when you're a veteran as long as he was in these games. But I honestly think the Redskins have to think and look more about themselves, less about their adversaries. Their problems are curable in-house. I don't know that they've been beaten by teams that are smarter or better or all that much more talented most of the time. I think a lot of their problems on defense have just come down to really a lack of pass rush, number one, and number two, a lack of ability to make tackles in the open field in that secondary. And they've got to fix those 2 things. If they can cure those evils, they got a shot, not only against Foles, but against whoever they play.
Now, Adam, how much as a defensive lineman would you be relishing the opportunity, if healthy, to face this Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, which at times seems to be only lining up 3 or 4 guys, no matter how many jerseys are on the field? They're having a heck of a time protecting their passer.
I mean, honestly, I always get a little bit more excited just for divisional games. Like he said, it's worth 2 points. You get a win, they get a loss. You get to bump yourself up, you get to bump them down. So to me, that's the biggest thing. And of these last 7 games that the Redskins play, they play 5 divisional opponents. And that's a huge opportunity to move up in the standings and bump everyone else down. And that's why I said earlier in the week to not throw in the towel. The season is not over, and it starts this weekend against a very young quarterback.
Now, Grant, you talked about the Redskins having a hard time getting pressure in that pocket, getting to the quarterback. Given the Philadelphia offensive line, the shape that they're in, is this an opportunity for them to come out and actually get that pressure, something that's been severely lacking of late?
Yeah, I think it is, Chuck. I really do, because I think if you look at the problems the Redskins have had over the last couple of weeks, most specifically, it's just been a lack of consistency. I mean, at times they've actually gotten to the quarterback and forced passers off their marks. They've had to move their feet and change passing lanes, things like that, which is great. But it just has come in spurts, too sporadic. And you've got to be relentless in getting after the quarterback. And you look at the quarterback sacks just as one metric for kind of determining pressure. And the Redskins have now gone consecutive games without a QB sack. They had one game in Pittsburgh where they had a sack, where their only sack came against the wide receiver on a gadget play. They didn't get any against Cam Newton in Carolina. You saw what happened with the Panthers at home against the Broncos this week. That offensive line just got demolished and swallowed up by Denver's front. So, again, I don't know that I'd look a ton into Philadelphia's personnel. So the fact that their injury riddle helped the Redskins, unequivocally and certainly, sure. But this is more about the Redskins, just committing to making sure they don't give a quarterback time. And it may take gambling a little bit. It may take some risks on the back end where you're asking cornerbacks or safeties who are struggling in coverage to play in isolation, one-on-one. But however you've got to do it right now, you've got to get people into the backfield and after the quarterback, especially against the rookie. The one guy I'll point to is Ryan Kerrigan, who I think has been terrific over these last several weeks overall. We're talking about a run-stuffing presence, a guy who's taken on double the teams and chips in the passing game. He's been very sound in coverage and has made sure tackles in the open field. The one area of his game that's dissipated since the Arakpo injury, since he's seen more attention from offensive lines and from tight ends, sacks. He had 3.5 after 4 games. So fast forward to now, he's had just the 1 sack against a wide receiver since. And that's just not at all what you're expecting from Kerrigan. So I think you really need Ryan Kerrigan to step his game up.
We're speaking with Grant Paulsen here on Fourth and Pain, getting ready for the Washington Redskins and the Philadelphia Eagles this afternoon. And Grant, I don't know if you saw this report. A beat writer, maybe Les McClain up in Philadelphia this week, hypothesized that Kyle Shanahan could be on the short list of coaches to replace Andy Reid in Philadelphia should he be let go, and it looks like he will at the end of the season. How much stock do you put in that? Is that a realistic chance for the Redskins to lose their offensive coordinator?
Well, I don't think it's realistic at all, no. Is it possible? Sure. I'm on record as saying that I think Kyle Shanahan is a tremendous offensive mind. I think Monday through Saturday, the schemes he draws up, the way he gets receivers open, just the way he thinks about football is next level. He is an impressive guy mentally. He grew up around the game, obviously, with his father, Mike, orchestrating and designing schemes, the likes of which people hadn't really seen before either. And so he's brilliant in that regard. Now, I think as a play caller, he's come a long way, and he's, at this point, good. I still think he's got a long way to go to be great. But Kyle Shanahan's an excellent offensive coordinator, and he's going to be a candidate in the next couple seasons for jobs. Personally, I think getting a gig next year would probably be before he's ready. I don't look at him as a guy who's ready to be an NFL head coach. I think so much goes into that in terms of just the relationships you have to manicure, not just in your own locker room, but whether it's the media or the fan base and all the interviews you've got to do and the press conferences you've got to hold. They're just things that at his age and even with the experience he's got, he doesn't have to do a lot of in Washington. So I'd be very surprised if he was a serious candidate for a head coaching job this coming year. I think he's a couple seasons away from that. But do I think he's going to be an NFL head coach? Yes. but I think he'll be a good one. Yeah, I just think he's extremely smart, and oftentimes, from an X's and O's standpoint, he's probably one of the smartest guys in most of the rooms he's in, even with other NFL personnel. But I think that story might be a year or two early at this point.
And last question for you before we let you go, Grant Paulsen. Along those same lines, the Redskins, they still, despite the 3-6 record, they seem to be on the right track. They've got, obviously, Robert Griffin III, which is paying dividends and will pay dividends into the future. Let's say Mike Shanahan lasts the 5-year contract. Is Kyle Shanahan the natural successor then to the throne here in Washington?
I think it's too early to say that, Chuck. I mean, is there a possibility that that's the case? Sure, but we don't even know how this offense is going to look in Week 17 yet, let alone how they'll perform in the coming couple of seasons after this one. And I'd point to Jim Haslett, who I think's done a fine job, but he's a guy who, when this defense was just outside of the top 10 last year and playing at a high level, looked like it was on the verge of being in the top 5 to start this season, was very popular among fans and in the industry. And, his name seemed like it was circulating and coming back up as a guy who really knew what he was doing and could be due for more responsibilities. Now the Redskins defense is struggling largely because of player problems and injuries and not necessarily because of being out-coached. And all of a sudden he's a guy who people are calling for to be out of a job. And whether you think that's ridiculous or not, that's how quickly things can change. So I don't know if it's fair or necessary to guess right now as to what the Redskins will do in a couple seasons. Mike Shanahan's got to worry about winning some football games to get through this contract. And if the Redskins can start to even their win-loss record with the personnel improvements that they've made to start measuring their success, then he'll be in really good shape. And I'm sure all of his assistants, including Kyle, won't have to worry too much about it.
All right. Well, on that note, we are fresh out of time. Thank you so very much for believing in our weirdness. I'm Chuck Carroll.
I am Adam Carriker, largest arms on the D-line. Peace out, Fourth and Painters.